IntelliTect very strategically manages its business. It's very careful about having emergency funds to weather the downturns like we've had with COVID in the broader economy. IntelliTect has been very solid through that. And despite anything else we say today, IntelliTect strategically is always focused on doing the absolute best it can for the business to be able to grow and be strong and make sure that we're all employed, right? So the interesting part about today and what I'm going to interview Mark about is what happens after that, after the revenue and expenses, they turn into profit, and IntelliTect does some unusual things with its profit. And so I wanted a chance to ask Mark about some of these questions. And so that is what we're going to be talking about today. So with that, we'll start out. Mark, why did you start IntelliTect?
Yeah, it's an interesting story. I remember sitting on the couch in my house and sort of trying to decide what we're going to do. And Elizabeth and I talked about it, and I was doing a bunch of sort of extracurricular work at the time. I was working for a company full-time back then, a $1 billion plus company. And on the side, I would used to go teach at conferences, and I'd get a little bit of revenue from that, or I'd go teach a class, or I'd actually got writing, so I was writing books. And so what we did was we decided to set up the company as a way of sort of designating the funds in a separate category that wasn't going to be combined with my regular income, and a way of sort of putting it aside. And the whole purpose of that is we wanted to donate at a specific level, percentage level, based on all the money that was coming into these extracurricular activities. And so back in 2006, we started IntelliTect. We did set it up with the intent that it could grow. I didn't think it necessarily would, but I set it up with the right business license and all that kind of thing. But the real intent, the real purpose of it was a way of sort of shuttling all funds that came in outside of my full-time job as a way of designating us to be able to do additional philanthropy. And we did that together. So Elizabeth and I decided this is what we'll go forward and do.
So that separation of funds was just to keep the philanthropy.
It was a logistical reason. That was the origin. Yeah, exactly.
All right. So the fact that you already knew from the beginning you were creating IntelliTect for philanthropy says that was already really strong with you in your life, and presumably that came from your childhood. So can you tell us a little bit about your childhood experiences and what drove you to help eliminate poverty?
Yeah, I certainly don't think the reason that we donate today is because of childhood experiences. Elizabeth and my childhoods were pretty different. But I do remember one story specifically. I remember I was around 10 years old, and I went to a camp. And while I was at the camp, I had a small backpack which got stolen from me. And it's a pretty hard impact when anything gets stolen from you. You sort of feel violated. And I certainly went through that process of anger and frustration. But eventually came to terms with, found out that it was stolen, and I got it back actually. It was stolen by a child that was similar age to me. Mm-hmm. It was a black child in the same community where I was at camp. And I use the word black here fairly carefully, just to note that we can say African American about people that are African or born in Africa. And so this person was black, and that's sort of the term that's pretty standard there in South Africa. And so I remember sort of having a sense that this person had stolen from me and being angry, but then started to transition and started to realize from their perspective what was going on, that really this crime was for them a matter of survival. Mm-hmm. And if I truly put myself in their shoes, I would actually feel justified in the fact that if I needed to survive, and that meant stealing somebody else's backpack, would that be okay? And so this sort of empathy came about of sort of me transitioning and starting to realize that while I won the birth lottery in the sense that I was born as a white South African amongst sort of the 93 percentile or so roughly in that population, this person was clearly not. They were probably born at the bottom of the lottery, and they sort of lost the lottery, if you like, and had very little opportunity from escaping that. And they were literally no longer perpetrators, but they were actually doing something to survive that was probably justifiable. Wouldn't we all, at least to live, be justified in stealing, in this case, a 10-year-old's backpack?
So you're saying that situation itself is an injustice?
Yeah, just the very fact that I had so much and they had so little was an injustice, and the fact that they were doing the best with what they had, but it was unjust that I had so much and they had so little. and that continues to be something I wrestle with all the way today. So that impact that I experienced there is true today, but I don't think it's because of that experience. I think I continue to think through and logically work through the fact that I have so much in comparison to it's a huge percentage of the world population that is living in extreme poverty.
So I think everyone thinks injustice is a good goal to fight against, but there are some who believe that it's impossible to make a difference, or you can spend all the money in the world and it will still exist. How do you answer that?
Yeah, on a large scale, I think we can see very clearly that we've had an impact. If you look at 1990, extreme poverty levels were around 36 or so percent, which is a significant part of the population. Back then, it was about $1.25 in 1990. And today, the poverty rate is at $1.90 per day. So if you're in extreme poverty, you're earning about $1.90 per day per individual, which is just unimagiable. But the rate has changed. We've dropped about a percentage point per year since 1990. We're sitting around 10%, a little bit below 10% today. The numbers have dropped pretty considerably since COVID started, because the impact on countries that are in poverty has been significantly higher than the impact in the United States. Most governments don't have welfare and stuff like that that's been happening here, so it's definitely declined a bit. But we're around 10% or so is the extreme poverty rate today. So there alone, I think we can say that it is possible to make a difference and make a significant difference. The other perspective is much more personal. As I think about the impact that we as a company have made on people's lives, I can point to specific women that I've met in northern Uganda who had their property or stolen or taken away from their entire family. Or I can point to specific children that Elizabeth and I worked with and had an impact on in Mozambique, whose lives are radically different because of the time we spent there. Mm-hmm. So while we can look at the big problem and say, there's 700 million people living in extreme poverty in the year 2020, 2021, I can still say with confidence that we know that we've made an impact. And as a company, the work that we're doing is impacting individual lives in a ways that radically their life will be different as adults than it would have been otherwise if we haven't done that. And so it's just no longer reasonable to say that we can't make a difference when I can point to the difference being made on a global scale as well as being made on a personal level. It really does matter.
And you said something about the $1.90 a day for extreme poverty. I can't remember who you were talking to the first time I heard you say that, but it blew my mind. And I punched some numbers in the calculator, and I looked. The median salary for a family of 4 in Spokane is $55,000 a year or so. Yeah. That means that they earn $1.90 in under 5 minutes, and this is what they're living on an entire day. Yeah. So.
The numbers are just drastic. When Elizabeth and I lived in Mozambique, I remember seeing a sign for the lottery, and if you won the lottery, you'd get $25,000. And I remember at the time, we had quit our jobs to go there, but I remember, I was probably making $75,000 or something at the time, and thinking, that's incredible. What I make in a third of a year, this is considered the lottery. Like, this would set you up for life. And just realizing the discrepancy and difference between sort of my lifestyle in the United States and the life of those living in extreme poverty, it truly was radical.
So something I didn't know when I was first hired, but I was pleasantly surprised to learn, is after the business has run and the profit has been generated, roughly 50% of our profit goes to philanthropy. And can you talk a little bit about how that number came to be and what went into that?
Yeah, when Elizabeth and I got married, it was back in 1994, we made a conscious decision to set aside about 15% of our income to go ahead and donate for philanthropy. And at that time, I was making about $28,000, so about $4,200. We decided to go ahead and give away sort of philanthropy, sort of sensing that we could live quite comfortably, and the impact of that money would help out other people pretty drastically. And then as we generated more income and we got more income, we realized that if we didn't need it at $28,000, why would we suddenly need it when we were getting $50,000? Why do we suddenly need that much? So we sort of changed and scaled the percentage. And the goal for us was sort of, as our income grew and as we got raises and income, we could give away at a higher percentage. So slowly over time, we sort of moved that percentage, and we decided actually when we got married what the percentage would be when we had a certain amount of money, and then as we get to that point, we just decided to increase the percentage of income. So this thing for us was a decision that we made early on, and we just continued to do. And that was why when we started IntelliTect, it was sort of, well, this is above and beyond that certain percentage, so let's just donate the money at that level. It was sort of just automatic. It wasn't something that was a struggle, and we'd always been doing it. It wasn't like we noticed, oh, we've got this much less money, because we were just giving it away. We didn't see the impact. So
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. The other thing that I feel really good about, knowing when I go do my job, or any of our IntelliTect employees just do their job every day, do a good job for the clients and help the company, you are also directly helping other people in need. You're doing good concretely. Can you share some specific examples of impact that we've made with IntelliTect?
Sure, I'll talk about a bunch. We started investing with a company a couple of years ago now called Capable, and they focus on helping individuals learn to sort of farm in northern Uganda. And we, in terms of just sort of donating to that organization called Capable, they started doing studies and realized that the average income per individual, per person, was 19 cents a day. And through the work that we did through them, we were able to change income levels over 2 years from 19 cents a day to $1.90, $2 a day per person. So, and that's if you had a family with only one person working or two people working. That was for the entire household. You're raising each individual's income to that level. And that's obviously radically changing. So it's a 2-year program. It's called a graduation program, where they move out, and the goal is that they would be able to sort of become self-supporting in that program. Another one was we worked for the injustice. Women in northern Uganda were having sort of these men come and steal their property and just take it away from them. And they were large families, sort of the grandmother and their kids and their grandkids, and they would take the property away and just remove that income level. And so we started to work through an organization called International Justice Mission to establish a legal system that allowed these people to defend themselves, these women to defend themselves. We did things like training the police force so that actually could call the police and ask for protection.
Mm-hmm.
And recently, in fact, over the last year, we actually got laws established at the Supreme Court level that provides protection for women, for widows, so that they do have legal right to actually maintain and keep their property over time. These are all stories that again, we're starting to see a real impact, that you as an employee, when you work individually every day, we obviously try to pay you a salary that's fair and communicates that we value you. But literally the stuff that's after that we gain as profit, we're able to take and use to literally change and impact people around the world. And so the hour that you spend working at a Vista and sort of helping them manage a release is something that is continually contributing to changing the world and making the world a better place for people who just have no options and are barely hanging on.
What about some other closer to home impact?
Yeah, so probably the one that is the most impact we've noticed, back in 2011, we worked with a transitional home called Naomi, transitional home for women and their children. We have a couple of houses, now it's actually 3 residences where the women live, and as a way of sort of helping them move from homelessness or an abusive situation to help them escape that, sort of get set on their feet so that they can sort of move on and start living independently. And we started that, as I say, back in 2011, and the goal there was to sort of see transition. We've also learned, a lot of these programs are learning a lot, and so one of the things that we've learned in that program was that the root causes are not always just economic.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them might be emotional, they may be drug related, and so that's a situation where we're working programmatically to sort of help establish an emotional stability and a financial stability that allow those women to go ahead and escape from that situation. And that's right here in Spokane. About 10% of the work that we do, the money that we donate, is going towards sort of local things here in Spokane.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other part of it is going to sort of extreme poverty or extreme injustice. It's not limited to we think poverty is definitely injustice, especially extreme poverty, but some of the situations are things like fighting slavery or establishing women's rights or injustice of racism, those kinds of things.
All right. So with so many different charities available that could benefit from the resources that you have, how does IntelliTect decide where to apply that for the best impact?
This is hard. It turns out that giving is hard. We think it's really easy, but it turns out that giving strategically and in a giving way that truly helps and doesn't make people dependent is actually fairly difficult. In our case, we've worked with the organizations all the way back since Elizabeth and I got married. So we've got good relationships with many organizations, and we add and remove to those every year, 1 or 2 or 3 organizations. Mm-hmm. So a big part of for us is we have strong relationships. We've gone and visited. So, Abigail and I, my youngest daughter, we've actually gone to see, the work that International Justice Mission is doing in northern Uganda. We've gone and seen the clinic that we built in Gulu. So we've seen their work and the fact that that's actually having. Ultimately, the goal for us is to go to the margins, go where we don't see people helping. Mm-hmm. And so we're less likely to go help a village that's right on the river in a thoroughfare because of the fact that we think that they're going to get the economic stability over time. We're much more likely to go, 50 miles out off of the river. We're less likely to go to Mexico or Guatemala because their proximity to the United States means they're much less likely to have the extreme poverty that somewhere like Africa is going to have. Often people say to me, well, you're helping Africa because, that's where you're born. And while that's true, I don't think that's the reason we're doing it. I think ultimately the reason we do it is because that it's on the margins. And we see the difficulty and the likelihood that those people are going to get help is so much more significant. When I travel to Pemba, Mozambique, it's a 38-hour trip just to get there, and then sort of start to encounter and work with the people there. So the ability to give and understand and understand the need and help strategically, it just takes a lot more effort. And so we're going to the places and working with what we call in the margins, the places that are much less likely to get support.
So when I think of the on the margins, I think of like an animal shelter. And if someone were to go adopt a cat, it's much easier
Yes.
to find a family for a cute little kitten than a grumpy looking 10-year-old tomcat or something.
And the same is true with adoption here in the United States. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. It's a great analogy to try to go places where people are not necessarily going to get support otherwise.
That's great.
That's a good analogy.
So when we look to the future, what is IntelliTect looking at next for its big impact or its next giving?
There's a number of things. One of the things we started a couple of years ago was we actually set aside money into what's called a donor advised fund, which means we've donated the money. It's no longer our money, but it is still our money to designate. And the goal with that was that we would save up a sort of an order of magnitude larger amount of money that we could then go do something much more significant. So right now we would work on a small village and impact a small village. But the idea is that if we save this money in this donor advised fund, we could then go do an order of magnitude something more significant. So maybe affect a town or something like that. So that's one change, is we're looking for a much larger project. It's probably 2 to 5 years away for us to save this kind of money, but we're excited to sort of think of what the opportunities would be to do that. This year we started something different. We actually started giving money directly. So there's an organization called Give Directly, and they actually do cash infusions directly to families and households. And the idea is that it's through significant study discovered that when you donate, say, $800 or $1,000 to a family, that they won't go drink it, that they really will go ahead and sort of build a roof for the house or buy chickens so that they can actually start farming, or buy a plot of land, that they strategically think through and know better what their needs are rather than an organization. And so we're working with Give Directly to go donate and inject into an entire village, support an entire village, everyone gets the same amount, and then do studies over time to see what that impact is. And we'll start to see, we've got communication with people on the ground there that will actually let us know, hey, this is what the families bought their money or do with that money. One thing that's been key about that investment is it turns out that, and this is going to sound sexist, but studies have proved this time and time again, that investing in women is a way better investment in these kinds of scenarios than investing in men. So that money is almost always going through the female head of household rather than through the man. It just turns that investing, when you're trying to change the world in extreme poverty scenarios, investing in women is much more strategic than investing in men.
That's interesting.
And so it's been interesting to see as we do more work. A lot of the work you'll see is we're trying to sort of work in scenarios where it's with women. So whether it's Compassion International and we're investing in sort of a compassion center for children. Again, it's with the women. With the widows in northern Uganda, it's with women. So just a lot of these scenarios, that's just a more effective investment when it comes to fighting extreme poverty.
I hadn't thought about that before, and I guess it's a one-person study, but in my case, that would be true in my household too. My wife would do much better with it than I would.
I don't want to make this too broad. I'm not trying to say general, but definitely when it comes to poverty, that is by far a better investment, is to go ahead and give to the women.
Interesting. So,
or invest in education for women. So it's the same thing, investing in education for the women. One other thing I'll sort of mention as well, and this is something that is pretty dear to Elizabeth's heart, and I love the passion around this too, is we've really been impacted by sort of social injustice and starting to see that happen through the news in the past year or so. And so one of the things we're looking at right now is seeing, could we send an African American through law school? Like, what would it take to pay for an African American who couldn't do this on their own, so that they would then move into sort of the South or a Southern state or something like that, and sort of chart to fight a legal battle or set up a legal precedence to defend an African American in the United States, so or a series of those. So that's an area we haven't figured out yet, but something that we're actually investigating and sent emails about. Sort of, hey, how do we go ahead and start supporting minorities towards scenarios that would help them to escape maybe a circle of poverty that they may be in.
That's great. So to bring it back around and say, for the IntelliTect employees, IntelliTect as a strategic organization, what are we actually asking employees to do? And second, if people have been interested by this and are inspired and want to be more involved with philanthropy, what can they do to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, nothing. We are not asking employees to do any differently than do awesome at their job. The reality of it is, as you do your job and make an impact, that is changing the world, and it is making the world better for people. And that's not, you don't have to do anything special besides continue to perform and do excellence with your work. When you sort of work extra, in your case, you're a great example. When you do extra stuff and the significant bonus comes your way because of the additional effort that you've put in and the additional revenue that we're earning, that turns out to be another way where you're doing more and making a great impact, because we're able to take the additional profit that was earned through your effort, and we're able to donate that profit in the same way. So those are things that is just doing your job that is starting to make an impact. If you want to do more than that, I think there's multiple ways. First of all, for a long time now, I think around 5 or 6 years, we will go ahead and match people. We're not going to match you to go support, the sort of, increasing the number of pets you can have or something like that. But if there's a nonprofit that matches with our fight against injustice, we'd love to go and partner with you in that. So we'll match funds that you go ahead and donate, and we'll work with you to sort of think through strategically what's going on and what the impact would be. There's several examples last year where people sort of suggested, hey, would you help support the school lunch program that's going on here? And so we donated to programs that were employees suggested. We had situations where there were hurricane relief or things like that we've gone ahead and matched people on. We'd also welcome, for you to enter the dialogue. If you're interested in learning more or understanding more about what we're doing, we would welcome for you to participate in the conversations that I have with nonprofits, choosing projects that are happening. We work with these organizations, and they come forward with us and they say, hey, these are the 3 projects we're thinking about. Which one sort of keeps your passion hot and keeps you excited about the work we're doing? Mm-hmm. It seems kind of selfish, but it's important to us that we continue to be excited about the work and the investment that we're making overseas. And so they'll approach us with different projects, and we'd be welcome any opportunity that employers would like to sort of engage in that conversation and understand more about the work that we're doing. I think that's clearly something. I think the other thing that is worth realizing is that the sense of making a difference in the world. Mm-hmm. I hope that's contagious. I hope it's contagious for me. I hope it's contagious for other people that I collaborate. And ultimately, I think that this is part of our company culture. That each person understands that they are not just doing something for themselves. They're not doing something that allows me to buy my 3rd or 4th yacht. I'm working on my 4th, just so you guys know. But it's really about saying, okay, what's the difference that we can make? And so if we can, I hope that people embrace a culture that says, I am working hard and committing to excellence, and at the same time I have purpose that changes the world and makes the life better for those people who are suffering from extreme injustice of some kind. And so that's my ask, I think, is that this becomes part of, I think it is to a large extent, but people are just aware of the impact that they're making. The 11, the years that we've been in business since 2006 is we are making a radically different impact, and it's not we as in Elizabeth and I, it's we as a company. It's multiple orders of magnitude difference that what we can do now as a company than what I was doing when I was working full time. And I think that's totally a thank you to the employees and to the work that they're doing, and I hope that they realize what a difference they're making in people's lives. I hope that in the future maybe there's an opportunity for you to actually meet and talk to some of these people and sort of have conversations with them just to understand that impact. It really is something you guys should be extremely proud of.
And as we continue to strategically manage the business for growth, for new clients, for just being more successful overall for all of us, we'll end up being able to do more, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, just to be clear, right? We're doing this out of the profit. And if we think it's worthwhile for us to go invest strategically in buying a higher end computer, or it makes more sense for us to go do training, we're going to invest it. That's the right thing to do for the company. And we want to make sure we're setting up the company to be the best strategically as a business. The end goal is we're taking the profits that after that and saying, well, rather than lining Elizabeth and my pockets, let's go ahead and change the world. But we're not doing it in a way that's taken away from a strategic way the company executes, or thinking through savings, or making us sure stable, those kinds of things.
Great, thank you. So with that, we are out of time now. So again, it's an unusual employee meeting. Thank you guys for joining us for this, and thanks for the great questions. I don't know if we'll use this format in the future, but I'm really appreciative, and thank you, Mark, for sharing some of this with us. I've always been curious about the philanthropy. Any last words before we wrap?
I just want to say thanks. Thanks for your questions. Thanks for interacting. I would appreciate feedback. I know, let's send it to, if it's good feedback, you can send it to me. Bad feedback, send it to Aaron. No, any feedback would be helpful. It was a hard choice to decide to do this. I think we wrestled with it for a long time. We've actually postponed it at least once because we weren't sure if it was a good idea. But just know that I'm safe, and I'd like any input you guys have around this topic, whether talking about it or what we do or strategically. But ultimately, I want to say thank you. Thank you so much for the work that you guys are doing on a day-to-day basis. It is truly changing the world.
All right. Well, thank you. Everyone have a great day. Goodbye.